Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Subra Suresh, president of the university. Every time I come to the School of Computer Science, I always feel overdressed. And, and one weekend I was here in a t-shirt and I was overdressed. So I just wanted to mention that, and I think Andrew is making me feel more and more that way. And I tease him all the time about it. Welcome, and this is the official kickoff of the 25th anniversary of the official founding of the School of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon University. And until I came here about 15 months ago, I had the pleasure of knowing about Carnegie Mellon quite a bit from the outside. Knew many of its illustrious alumni, faculty, who are also, several of whom were friends of mine when I was outside Carnegie Mellon. And I hope they are still my friends. And one of the things I knew about it was the impact that this institution has had and this school has had on a global scale. And in one of my previous jobs, computer science was a domain that reported to me in another institution, which is a competitor. And one of the things I've realized since coming here is that this School of Computer Science is even richer, even broader, even deeper, and even stronger than I ever knew from the outside. So it's a great pleasure for me to be part of this, this wonderful school in my current role at Carnegie Mellon University. The founding of the school, as you know very well, started with an unusual concept of bringing together people from, at that time, 4 different departments: mathematics, electrical engineering, psychology, and business. And of course, the pioneers who created this flavor at that time included people like Herb Simon, Alan Novell, and Alan Perlis, and many others who are here. I was just looking at Raj Reddy sitting over there, and who have played a major role in influencing the direction of the school. There are many interesting flavors of the school that we could talk about. One of the things that jumps to mind is this was viewed by the people who created this not only as an entity or as a sub-part of Carnegie Mellon University or a school that focuses on computer hardware, software, and all the impact it can have. But the unusual perspective at that time to take was how to combine the engineering and technological aspects of computers, whether it's hardware, software, applications, coding, etc., or devices, or large computers at that time, with the human condition. So it's how do humans interact with computers, not with respect to just human-machine interactions, but cognitive functions, concept of learning, learning outcomes. And that permeates not just in computer science, but through the entire campus through this day, and the influence that this school has had directly and indirectly in furthering, in pioneering, and also in impacting that perspective on a global scale is quite profound. The other point I would like to make is my own perspective, not as a computer scientist, but as an engineer and a scientist. Engineers and scientists appreciate computer science, but we live at a point in time, if you're a human being and a citizen of the world, you cannot avoid computing. It influences your life in every way, every day. So so that gives us a unique perspective in shaping the grand challenges of the 21st century in ways in which we may not have thought of if we were just thinking about supercomputers or supercomputing, or even fields like computational biology, etc. How do we alter the human condition through computing? And whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in communications, interactions, networking among 7 billion people on the planet, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result, I think that's one of the most powerful things. This being the leading school of computer science with its impact, and we're going to see this in this panel shortly, we can dare to ask some questions because of what I just said about the 21st century. So about it, almost a year ago when Eric Schmidt was here last November for my inauguration, we were talking in the green room just before the event, and we just started talking about, just semi-jokingly beginning the conversation, what would the world of computing be like if CMU had not created a school of computer science 25 years ago? Then we stretched that thing a little bit. What would our day-to-day life today be like if CMU had not created a school of computer science? And then we can stretch the topic further, which is the theme of the 25th anniversary. Now that we have a school of computer science, which is so distinguished, what is the world going to look like 25 years from now with all the rich history that we have had? And extrapolating, if you're a conservative, maybe you want to extrapolate linearly, at least linearly. If you're somewhat ambitious and optimistic like me, I would extrapolate it exponentially. And I think this is what makes it very exciting. This is what makes the school very exciting. And at this very exciting time, I'm also very pleased to have Andrew Moore as a partner in this journey with me, leading the School of Computer Science. And Andrew, for those who may not know, I think there are very few people here who don't know Andrew, has been a faculty member at Carnegie Mellon University. In 2006, he was attracted by Google to start Google Pittsburgh, which has now grown to about 300 employees, and it's in the process of tripling its footprint in Bakery Square. And when Andrew and I started to talk early this year, it became abundantly clear that only Carnegie Mellon has the opportunity that every university president would dream of. And that is to poach one of their employees from an organization that has more resources than God. And so when he and I met at our residence for dinner to talk about this, we talked about why it was interesting to him to even contemplate coming back to Carnegie Mellon. And he said exactly what I said earlier, and that is, of all the institutions he knows, CMU has an opportunity to shape the human condition in the 21st century through computing and computers, more so day-to-day lives, not just computation, day-to-day lives more so than any other institution. So we are delighted to have Andrew join us as the new dean. And the panel will demonstrate during our year-long celebration of the 25th anniversary a number of different facets of School of Computer Science. One example of that to begin with today is the conversation that Andrew will have with Serkan Piantino, who's a relatively recent graduate from 2004 in computer science. And he started in the finance business, very quickly moved to Facebook in 2007 in California. And then since 2010, he's been heading up Facebook's engineering efforts in New York City. And he has played a very important role in the way in which Facebook's many portfolios have evolved on a global scale and watched the transition very, very fast. And I had the pleasure of meeting him last fall in New York City, and it was a great opportunity to welcome him back to campus today. So I very much look forward to participating in the School of Computer Science 25th anniversary celebration during this year. And Andrew has been pushing me to clear my calendar as much as possible so that during this year I can devote a lot of time to the School of Computer Science, which it very richly deserves, which I am thrilled to accommodate to the fullest extent that I can. And I want to hand the microphone over to Andrew to kick off the 25th anniversary events. And also I want to offer my congratulations and thanks to the faculty, staff, and students who played a major role in impacting computer science around the globe through this wonderful school. I'm just looking at Angel Jordan, who, working with the president of the university at that time, played a role in this. And thank you, Angel, and thank you for coming today. And I look forward to watching the celebrations as they evolve during the course of this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Subra. Let me introduce Serkan to you all. This is the guy. We're going to learn more about him as we're talking later.
Maybe a guy.
That's right. But first, we have a little surprise for our esteemed president. One thing about this particular room is it's a place where, if you look, there are name tags on the backs of plenty of seats of key people who have been supporters of the dream of the School of Computer Science over the years. Some of the people who built this the way it should be, including our fine previous collection of deans, of whom two of them I see here, Raj and Jim, right there. So the names of the people who have had this huge impact on the school that we're all now members of are hidden on the seats all around this auditorium. And now today there is a new name which we have snuck in, B13. 13 is to celebrate the fact that in 2013 we got an awesome new president, and the B, we couldn't think of a good answer, so I'm just going to say, so far he appears to be a bloody good president. So anyway. So thank you very much, Subra. I know, Subra, you're having to head on because we are doing the alumni event immediately afterwards, so Subra is going to have to disappear now, but I just wanted to thank you very much for your kind words and support. Thank you. All right, before, you can sit down. Actually, we'll both sit down. It's much more relaxing to sit down. I don't know about you, I feel a little awkward because I haven't really done this kind of talk show format before in an academic place. I just wanted to mention one thing. Subra has already introduced Serkan, and he has had this amazing career, amazing impact. He is an example of a phenomenon which we cannot forget. We've got to keep remembering and communicating to everyone we know. The CMU School of Computer Science undergraduate program is incredibly successful. The statistics show just how many people want to become a part of it, and they also show, and Serkan has seen this in Facebook, I've seen this in Google, I've had friends from Dropbox, from Amazon, from Microsoft who said the same thing. The trajectory and the career paths of the people coming out of that program, the SCS undergraduate program, are not just similar, they are strictly faster, superior to those from every other school in the world. There's no kind of, oh, we're kind of joint #1 with other people and having good computer science programs about this. We're absolutely unambiguously #1. The most recent report from the Washington Post looking at this from recruiters, asking them the same question. Carnegie Mellon, absolute #1. The folks coming out of our program, and later on, as the months go by and I'm continuing to do my deaning stuff here, we're going to explore this, exactly why and how this phenomenon happens, but it is happening right now. Our people aren't just high IQ, they can get things done, they can work together, and this has been extremely good for Carnegie Mellon, having these successful people out there in the world. A fantastic example of this is Serkan himself, and I really admire what's happened to your career so far.
Thank you.
So anyway, first I wanted a little round of applause for all of our SCS undergraduates, including Serkan, who have been so successful. So, setting up a satellite office in New York doing really serious product and software development isn't easy. Are there skills that you think you learned or tricks that you learned while you're at Carnegie Mellon that helped you to do that?
Yeah, great question. I'm sure you have a perspective on this as well, having grown an office here. The one thing I remember, everybody's taken 251 great ideas. I think there's a big piece of the curriculum here that teaches you to not just look at things and understand the solutions to them, but understand how those solutions tie in sort of weird ways and manifest in different places around computer science. And I think that sort of boiling things down, sometimes it can be almost difficult because it takes so much manipulation to put new concepts into your brain once you learn to do that. But even when you start looking at human interactions, the way organizations are structured and what makes people successful, when you start thinking about, well, what is Facebook culture? Well, you do the same thing. You say, well, I think it's these core elements, and those are the things we're going to try to create in New York, and these are the things that we think create those things, and those core elements do end up being the things that work. So there's a certain fundamentalness, I guess, of the education here that is really important in all aspects of life.
I agree with that, and I do feel that sometimes setting up successful organizations, you are actually having to do some of the sort of block diagrams you might be doing in UML for an information system. So that's pretty interesting.
Exactly.
What do you think, as the years go by, what do you see curriculum of places like CMU, how would you like to see them develop? What do you think should be changing as time goes by?
Well, the first thing I want to call out, which is, I think, an integral part of how Carnegie Mellon will continue to be the top CS program, is diversity in our field. And I know that CMU has led the way. The stat, as I understand it, is that 40% of the incoming class is female, and there are all types of other things. Yes, that deserves quite a round of applause. You can't spend a decade in our industry and not notice that there are a lot of similar people, I'll put it that way. And what that says to me is that, and when I reflect on how I discovered computer science, it was pretty random. And so much of the potential and so much of a world in which people who understand technology get more out of the world than people who don't. So much of that is going to pass huge chunks of our population by if we don't do that. So diversity is number one. Number two, I think people say this all the time. In classes you get these nice, well-formed problems. They're the type of problems. The way I like to put it is they're the type of problems that you need a big brain to solve, right? And everybody here has big brains, so it all works out pretty well. I think a lot of the world, and a lot of what we sort of help people transition to when they join Facebook, is a lot of the world is these big, hard problems that you need to chip away at for a while, a different type of hard. And I think that can mean, a lot of the experiences you guys have, like looking at documentation, trying to find a bug, working at things that take a while, but also having to go and track down the person who wrote this code to begin with, or having to think outside of the box, or even having to give a presentation. God forbid you have to open PowerPoint, but sometimes rallying other people to your cause is necessary. And I think those, it's hard to create those in a classroom environment. My idea was always we should have, the third thing that I will say is that you inherit a lot of code. A lot of times you didn't start with a new file in Vim or Emacs. You actually have to show up to some code you don't understand, read it, make a change, and make it better. And so I always thought it would be great if there was a class where the code base stays from year to year and just gets bigger, and each new class roadmaps the next set of features and sort of does what we do on a day-to-day basis, which is poke around in this million-line Git repository.
That sounds great, and I think there could be a class segment on how to curse the people who came before you.
Effective use of Git blame. I totally agree.
Okay, that's very good. One thing that everything's changing every year now, and I think I don't know about you if you agree with this, but perhaps when we were younger, it was like every 5 years you saw the world of technology feeling like it's changing. Now it seems to be every 2 years, and the advent of this mobile-first world in which, I don't know about you, but I think that the use of the browser and the model of businesses being based around the browser is disappearing. That's pretty exciting, but it also makes it very hard, especially for large, successful organizations who already have a successful business model to survive. And hypothetically, I know people who've been in large organizations which have had to really think hard about how not to become redundant in just 2 years. How do you guys approach that? And firstly, I'm very interested in what you think is going to happen next in the world of mobile first.
Absolutely, yeah, I totally agree that while the browser isn't going to literally die, I think it's going to be tougher and tougher to get any mind share in Silicon Valley, or in tech in general, if what you're doing is trying to build websites that engage with people. Websites already engage with people. We've kind of covered that ground. We're now in this era where people have devices in their pockets that are ubiquitous. They're getting powerful in the way computers were a couple years ago. And we've just sort of scratched the surface in how those things can translate to being useful to people. I think a big shift that we see is websites, which are kind of these static screens that you use and you can interact with, and they serve lots of different purposes, but a lot of the way you measure what a website is doing and how well it's doing it is how much time people spend on it and how many hits you get and how much time people are spending engaging with your site. Whereas a phone, if you have a successful app, you can buzz it at any time. It has all types of context, and it can be this sort of more comprehensive, useful thing for you in all types of different ways. So I see a lot of the conversation shifting from engagement, which is kind of the web way things worked, into utility,
Yes.
which is a very different mindset, and I think unlocks a whole series of problems that are going to get increasingly difficult. One of the things we work on in New York is artificial intelligence, and it's not hard to imagine. I'm sure science fiction did this long before we started working on it. That you could talk to your phone and not just ask it, to transcribe some text, but also ask it contextual, rich questions about the world around you and about you as a person. And all of these are things that speak very directly to the experience of having a mobile device, and they're much more difficult than building a website. And so I think we're about to see, we're already seeing an explosion in the demand for specialized, difficult, tough computer science problems as we bridge this next gap where technology meets people where they are instead of where technology is now. There's a lot of stuff in there.
I really like that answer, and I think it is actually really important to see that the world really is changing, and the things that we as academics or the folks who are doing startups or the folks who are going to go into companies see, the goalposts have changed, and we now really are into this new world. For me, one of the biggest changes I've seen related to what you're describing is a few years ago, the cognitive boost that intelligent machines gave you to help you find the right documents, the right documents containing the right pieces of information. Now it's the right entities and being able to actually answer questions about these entities. And I just want to casually mention, I heard that there was some university which gave the question answering power that made the Watson system of IBM so successful. Just trying to remember which one that was. I think it was actually, it was CMU, yes. CMU, that's right, yeah, that's right. And we have lots of people who love doing that, and I think people here will be really excited to hear that the New York Facebook office is working in this area, because it's something we care about so much.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to ask you another question. This one's very interesting, because I was in your position representing a corporation, and I loved this question, but it's a very nuanced question. You can probably guess already what my question is. So, dealing with making things really, really good and powerful for the users based on exploiting and causing good things to happen based on their data is really exciting. And there's so many times when you can brainstorm amazingly powerful things that you could do for the users based on the thing that we're all experts at, which is processing data and coming up with good decisions. Absolutely. At the same time, there's all kinds of terrifying dystopian futures in which data is abused in various ways. You guys must have to worry about all this all the time. What can you say about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is what our generation is going to have to do. We have to have a conversation, I think, is the answer. So much technology has created the potential for so much, people spin off so much more data that can be captured and will be captured inadvertently if you're not careful these days than they used to. And there's so much potential for that data. And of course, there's so much that we want to protect about that data, and privacy is something that's important to people. And I think what that means is somebody, and it can be legislators, it can be government, it can be private companies like Facebook, and I think this is something we're doing, needs to sit down and say, well, what if the rules work this way? What if the things that are, what if, for instance, this is something that we talk about, the things that are on your profile, that's your space. And so you control them, you can delete all of those things, and you can do all of these things, but the things that are on other people's profiles are their space. There's a very simple organizing principle for data. And it's just, a scratch on the surface of what needs to be. But I think we are going to chip away at figuring out what these rules look like, and eventually they'll be as intuitive to us as, downloading music and paying 99 cents a song, or any of these sort of like new areas that technology has enabled. But right now we haven't had that conversation. And so it's very hard for people to understand what's happening with their data, what that even means. And I hope that we can have a sophisticated dialogue about this, and that one of the things that we contribute to the world is a good, nuanced, intuitive, ethical understanding of what it means to have privacy and also utility from the data that I create and I own and I contribute to the cloud, or however you want to put it. So I always said there's no satisfying answer to this question.
Yeah,
it's a very unsatisfying
it's really
answer.
hard.
But I mean, we just don't know. I talked to a copyright lawyer. I remember this conversation, and I pointed to all these things that I thought were silly about people creating mashups with songs and how that was illegal. And you can listen to the first 30 seconds of a song, and then it's free, and then after that you have to pay some amount of money. And there's just all these weird pieces of copyright law. And he said to me, no formulation of these rules is going to match your intuition, because we don't really have an intuitive sense of how copyrights work. Like, this is just not a thing that, basic ideas about property ownership or whatever, speak to. And I think the same is true about our data. Like, we will find, if we do sit down and have this conversation, we'll find that, there are things that we don't totally understand about how we want our data to be stored and represented, and who we want to have access to it. But hopefully we can make those rules clear, and people will understand what a cookie is, and have some peace of mind knowing what's happening with that.
I think that makes sense, but I want to push you on one thing there. When you said we sit down, we figure out. Who do you think that we is? Is it people like us in this room in universities? Is it the folks in the corporate offices? Is it the engineers working for the corporations? Should it be people in Washington? Who do you think the we is to do this?
Yeah, I think, this is kind of a fundamental right. I think that privacy is kind of a fundamental right, and we should be building laws that match everybody's sort of sense of ethics. But right now, I think it's the engineers. I think nobody really knows it at the level of depth, and it evolves so quickly that really only somebody with at least a bachelor's in CS can tell you what's happening behind the scenes. So I guess yes to your question, but the conversation really needs to start, I guess, among us, like the people who know what bytes are and are actually putting data into use.
I totally agree, and I really like the way you said it. I think it is actually, when you're learning software engineering or other aspects of computer science, these days you have to be learning or thinking about the policy implications and the broader implications. There's no such thing as a pure technologist divorced from the rest of this.
I totally agree. Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of other folks I know who are going to want to ask you questions, and we did promise that we're going to open this up to questions. So I'm going to hand over to the audience now, because I want to give everyone else a chance. But thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah.
Now, what I'd like is if folks just want to come down to the microphones, ask interesting, insightful questions. Feel free to ask questions which make Serkan squirm or make him laugh. This is a really good opportunity for us to have this. Please introduce yourselves. Let us know sort of who you are, what organization you're with, be it part of CMU or if you're a friend from outside. And you know that if you don't do that, then I'm going to keep asking questions, and my questions will be kind of boring.
I actually have several, but I'll only do it now. I'm Phil Mason. I was here from a very long time ago. I knew Mary before she finished her degree, so it goes go back that long. Since one of the things I don't know how the education is done here anymore, there was this, the Software Engineer Institute was on how you do better software engineering. I live in the Boston area and been involved for the last several years in something called Agile, which of course people know. I don't know where that is with regard to the education environment. How do you teach the students not to compete? There's not somebody telling them what to do. They have the responsibility themselves to self-organize. How is that being done within the universities? Or I don't know what Facebook does. So with regard to Agile, I understand, I mean, the company that I have the most curiosity is Apple, and nobody ever says how they do things. I think Facebook's a lot more open than that. So that's the first question.
Great, yeah. I can't tackle the university side of this, but
You can guess if you like.
I guess, yeah. Well, I think I will say that one of the reasons that Carnegie Mellon students tend to be the best, and this is an empirical fact, not a biased observation from an alum, but an empirical fact we see when they tend to join Facebook, is they work hard. They understand that building things is difficult, and they're ready to put that time in. Because they've gone through the process here over and over of working hard and reaping the rewards, and that's really how the world works. At Facebook, our most famous thing, the poster that you see when you walk around the offices says "Move fast and break things," and I think it's just things that are excellent. When you see something that really is outstanding, and when you see a place that motivates people and people feel like they come to because it's more than a job, they tend to be fast. They tend to have. Thomas Keller has in all of his restaurants this thing that says sense of urgency. I mean, it really does take that. You have to want, viscerally. You have to be, walking a little bit faster to your next meeting. You have to, really care to the point where you're on the edge of your seat to do things. And so the way we do that mechanically is we make sure that people are motivated not by promotion or whatever, but by the joy of seeing the things that they've built being used by many, many people. And the reason that we tell them to come work at Facebook is not that we'll pay you this amount of money or that you can attain this title or because the food is good, even though the food is very good, but it's because you will write something and you'll work with other people that are brilliant, and then soon, very soon, millions and billions of people will use it, and that is joyful. So we try to, at every point in our growth, we try to get out of the way of that. That means that if somebody complains that there are too many meetings, we take that seriously. We're very careful about the process. A great example is we always had a site that we would, when it was mostly a website, now there's mobile apps and everything, that we would push all of the code that was in our repository to every one of our X, where X has a lot of zeros after its servers, every Tuesday. And that got more and more difficult. We have gigabytes of code, and that code has to be now compiled and run in a virtual machine, and there are compiler diffs that have to go, and thousands of engineers have contributed to that code, and there are all these graphs to watch. We still do it. In fact, now we do it twice a day, one of those from New York because of time zones. And we have to use all types of things like BitTorrent to get the binaries out to the right place. But we decided to do that. We decided we were not going to slow down. I think we just care a lot about velocity. And I think that is a tremendous competitive advantage, something that I think everyone now should see the power of and do.
Quick follow-up question. Within Facebook software engineering, do teams, some teams, all teams, or none of the teams sort of use basically one of the agile methodologies?
Some teams, I think, is the answer. You have different flavors. You have teams that are working on, projects that are ambitious and, they're kind of things that we think will have this effect, but we're not sure, and we're playing in a product space. Those are the products get that get built and then rebuilt 7 times and before they actually ship. You have teams that are really pretty like focused on one metric that they think is important, like the coverage of all the places in the world where the owner of the place actually owns the Facebook page. And these are more tactical teams moving more quickly, more likely to have projects on a whiteboard that they check off every week and stand-ups every 15 minutes. There's no set procedure for how to do these things. It's more just do them well and move as fast as the people around you are moving.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Saporta. I'm the parent of a Carnegie Mellon student, and I'm a software engineer in New York. And I was wondering what you see in terms of the computer science and engineering students who come to you sort of fresh out of school. The ones I've seen are all great programmers, but what do you see in terms of their knowledge of source control, of design, of issue tracking systems, of DevOps, all the things that you have to do in addition to writing code to be successful? What are you seeing, and what can the schools do to make people even better at that?
Yeah, so I'm tempted to say they don't know anything about any of those things, which is sort of the short answer. I think it's actually getting better. I think the percentage of students that have like a project on GitHub by the time they show up at Facebook is going up, which is nice to see. And I think we've had these conversations with people in our schools for a while and given this feedback. So I think it's getting better. But to turn this into kind of a positive thing, that's my advice to everybody here who's in an undergraduate program. Build something. I would say do 2 things. Sorry, 3 things. Keep adding to my list.
4 things.
4 things.
5.
11 things. 11 things. We'll go through them in order. 3 things. I'm going to limit myself to 3. 1 is just build something. You don't have to. You can go to a hackathon and do it overnight, and that's awesome. But just build something and then put it on GitHub and just like go through those motions so you don't have any hesitation. You know what button to click, and it's just like 2 is just start a company and print business cards. And even if somebody's like, oh, cool, what does your company do? And you're like, we don't do anything. We just decided to print business cards. That's fine. That's fine. Again, just go through those motions. Get used to saying, I work at a company with these people and we started it and this is what we're trying to do. That's not 90%, but that's a big chunk of what you can do. And then the third thing would be to tell these guys what you like about your experience here and like help them figure out how to make you guys, I used this phrase before, but feel like this is more than just an undergraduate degree you're here for. This is like a piece of your future and a place you'll always kind of cherish. Let them know how to do that.
Very good answers, especially numbers 1 and 3. Number 2, I think you're a nutcase. And I say that with great respect.
Yeah. You're the first person.
Okay, I do have another one. By the way, I just got an email last week from LinkedIn that did list Carnegie Mellon Computer Science as the best place for, I think they said programmers. I don't think they said software developers. I don't know if anybody else here got that email. So that was pretty interesting. Now, the question is completely different from the other one. Wearables. Where are wearables in the future?
Yeah, wow. All over us. I don't know that much about this space. I have actually another Carnegie Mellon alum, my friend Christina, just started a company making a ring that helps you know what's going on with your phone without you having to take it out of your pocket, which is great. I think there's this sort of emerging place for technology that isn't just something you have to pull out and sort of look at. Like, I think there are all types of different interactions or different ways you may want to be notified about different things. And of course, there's this Apple Watch. I think a lot of our industry is now kind of in pause mode, waiting to see what happens with, is Apple creating a segment? Are they inventing 50 new idioms that we now have to copy and market in our own software? But I think the one thing that I'm seeing is that hardware is really compelling. I get asked about 30% of the time, whereas it used to be 0% of the time, hey, do you know an electrical engineer? Whereas it used to be 100% of the time, do you know a software engineer? And now, when people ask me for a software engineer, more than 50% of the time, they mean an iOS or Android developer. So those trends are pretty clear, and I think we're about to see another one of those big shifts in hardware and variables.
Yep. That makes sense.
Hi, my name's Ben Lichtman. I'm a sophomore in computer science here. So you started to address my point, but I sort of want to focus on it. I'm sort of going through my first internships, and what I'm seeing is a lot of the coursework I do here is very theory-oriented. Maybe there's programming involved, but it's concepts, it's ideas, and you mentioned 251, very idea-based. Then I get to my internship, and as others have mentioned, you know, they say, do you know Git? Do you know Agile? Do you know these things? But more than that, do you have a working knowledge of software engineering? And so, do you have recommendations on how to go through that growth process of equating both the theoretical aspects of computer science and the real, applicable, practical aspects?
Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, we joke about like having people fiddle with GitHub and things, and I think it really belies this point about building software in groups. It's very hard to run a class where you build software in groups, but that's really all that happens outside of school. I think like, this is a really difficult one. This is also like, you know, we have these interviews where we get at how somebody understands how processes will scale to millions or billions of things. Another thing that we really can't give people great experience with here without, you know, millions of people hammering your website every minute. That's not an experience that you get at Carnegie Mellon. Internships are awesome. You're in your sophomore year. You get to do 3 of these. You get to sample different companies. You'll probably work in different code bases. You'll kind of see how this works. I would love for more group-based collaborative projects that kind of get you into this. The one piece of advice I would say, besides like, yeah, this is the thing you're going to learn in industry, is dig up some of your old code. Go try to read it. You know, be sort of that meticulous person about dumb things like naming your variables, or just, you know, think of your code as something that you're like printing out and then mailing to somebody else and they have to pick up and read, because the empirical truth that we see is that you'll spend 3 times as much time reading somebody else's code as you will writing your own code. And you just have to get into the habit of that. And I will say, in a place like Facebook, people are very concerned. The thing that motivates people day after day is getting up and impressing their peers. That's true here, and that's probably true anywhere you go where the people are really great. And one way you do that is you write some code that somebody's just like, that was a pleasure to work in. I know exactly how that works. I want to take that design pattern and use it over here. Or why don't we generalize this so now it's a platform? If you're the guy that wrote the abstraction that everybody uses, that's much better than being, you know, the VP of XYZ. So just get in that habit of doing it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can I just do a quick follow-up question for you? So
Sure.
you also have the experience of going through the undergraduate program here. Do you remember there being a time when you were cursing, saying, I wish I had been taught these skills at CMU? Or do you think that they're things which someone who's been through CMU can pick up pretty happily in their first few weeks or months?
Yeah, so I did this like intermediate thing where I went into finance, and that, I think a lot of people have the same experience. That felt like a step back. Like the technology was there to service some business need, and consequently it wasn't designed to be very reusable. So when I first joined Facebook, it was tough because everybody was very good, and I was used to writing Visual Basic, I think is basically the right way to put it. But yeah, the first time somebody says, send me a diff, and you don't know what they're talking about, that is a bit of a panic moment. But luckily our tools are pretty good. I think I picked it up pretty fast, and it's a rite of passage. We now have boot camps, so you actually go through 2 weeks of just like, here's what this means, here's how to use this, here's how to use this. Do it once, literally check in some code in your first week here so that we know you know how to do that, and then go off and join a team. And I think that's really helpful, and hopefully other companies do that so everybody doesn't have to start from scratch and be afraid.
Great.
Hi, I'm Bob Murphy, Department Head for CompIO here. And I had a question that was stimulated both by the point about privacy and the point about AI. Mm-hmm. Right now, the primary mode of the interaction between a machine intelligence system and a user is a sort of a request. Would you like to be friended with this person, right? Do you see that mode disappearing? Do you see a mode where an agent makes that decision for you and says, yes, I want to be, I want to make that contact. I want to do this. I'm willing to accept that appointment. I'm willing to, where it's not, where everything isn't being presented to you for making a choice, but some app is making that choice for you. Do you see that?
Absolutely, and I don't even think it's related to. I don't even think it's just intelligent agents right now. I think you look at for instance, we have a big product where people check into places, and sometimes they don't see because their GPS coordinates are not that accurate. They don't see the place they want to check into, and so they go and create it. And so we have this constant problem of duplicate places, and we have all types of product reasons. But we also discover things over time. We discover, well, okay, not you, but a third person checked in here, and we're constantly having to build these infrastructures that don't wait for a request, process some data, and serve it back, but actually look at all of the stream of information and at some random point, make some sort of inference. For instance, you could imagine, I've wanted to build this product for a while, but we start to see photos come in, we start to see people checking in, and instead of putting these in people's streams and treating them as one thing, we discover, hey, there was a wedding this weekend, and these two people got married, and now we know that. These are the architectures of the future, where there's just streams coming in and all these avenues with which you can wake up somebody's phone, or you can commit something to a database, or you can send somebody an email. And of course there will always be queries, but there's also just more contextual streams of life, I guess, that need to be processed. And it's a surprisingly deep systems question, because the sort of query mentality is so deeply baked in how we do things now, and kind of the architecture of the internet, that things will have to change.
Very good answer. Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Morris. Something Serkan said a few minutes ago got me thinking about the problem I have this week. I'm teaching a class where I want the students to do A/B testing. And to put it simply, I don't have a data stream, or I don't have a website that they can do A/B testing on. Every website at Carnegie Mellon that I might be able to give them access to, if I do the calculation of how many hours it will take before I have significance for my A/B test, is I'll have to run that website. I'll have to do this test for about 2 years, in which case the website's already changed, so it's irrelevant. So you two, or maybe anybody in the room, but you two especially, from companies that have these big data streams, can tell me how can we arrange to give our students access to these torrents of data?
Oh, unfortunately, this is really hard, because especially a company like Facebook, we move very fast and we grow very fast, and so the trust that we put in individual engineers, we put in them. It's a lot of trust, and it comes with a lot of training, and we're able to put in them, literally legally, because they're employees, and there's a lot of trust that comes with that bit that we flip that says you are a full-time Facebook employee. And there's even more trust when it comes to controlling users' experience and running A/B tests. And I struggle to think of a way that we could open that up to people that aren't Facebook employees. What I would love to do is share, I don't know, maybe there's some way we can generate synthetic data or something that can give this experience. But this is one of the, I talked about the joy of putting things in front of people. Eventually you gather that joy because you see people using them in your daily life. That's a small set of people. Sometimes you overhear people talking about things, or you see things in the news. But most of the way you experience this joy is through looking at charts and seeing all these things. And I don't know of a great way to transfer that outside of the walls of Facebook. Again, very unsatisfactory answer.
No, it's really tough. I just wanted to add one thing. One of the killers with the A/B tests is that you can do a per session-based A/B test where you go into A or B according to your particular session, maybe based on the single cookie or the single event ID associated with that session. But real A/B testing, you often need to actually be looking at similar users on similar browsers, or the same user on the same browser over multiple times. At that point, you're already in massively complicated privacy preserving systems. And so aside from the data volume, the hassle and difficulty of setting up a useful A/B test is really tough. Because an A/B test which was just based on individual clicks or even short session events usually doesn't answer the question you're really interested in.
Can I add one thing that's just funny? Sometimes we do, A/B tests are nice, you can just hash a user ID and get a nice random sample of users. But sometimes you test things that have network effects, like if it's a message feature, you can't just test that on random users because they have nobody to send messages to. So we have to find these small communities of people where it's a small sample of all of our users, but people are very well connected. And that almost always means New Zealand. New Zealand is this like amazing
That's right.
network test bed because it's, you know, relatively small, but anyway, so sorry, New Zealand. You see a lot of broken Facebook products.
I know of another company which has another country which it does that too, and
Yeah.
I can't say what the country
Yeah.
is. But it's
Everybody's got their
something-
favorite country.
That's hilarious. All right, I think we need to wrap up at this point. I want to make a couple of other just logistical things. Firstly, I see it's printed here. I meant to say thanks for all the great questions. Now that presupposes that these were great questions, but I think they were. Do you think they were great questions?
Yeah, top notch.
I think they were great questions. Okay, very good. The Alumni Awards are coming up next. They're in the Kresge Theatre in the College of Fine Arts, which is in that direction. I want to make a very important plug that the Computer Science Building and the College of Fine Arts are linked together by a very important symbolic bridge, which happens to be also an extremely literal bridge, the Randy Pausch Memorial Bridge, which has wonderfully been decorated for this SCS and Kaylee event. And you should definitely check out the Randy Pausch Bridge to see the extremely nerdy and extremely meaningful decorations on that. I'll get to you this, it's illuminations involving binary code. I haven't seen it yet because it's not dark, but I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be great. I want you to, actually that's everything. The one thing I finally have to do is really thank Serkan. We here really appreciate the chance to see what's going on in the heads of folks from companies like Facebook and to see what's going on. We're also really proud and respectful of your personal success and the success of the Facebook New York office. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.